we know bouncing was a big part of your life. How did you get into it?
I got into bouncing and bodyguarding through one of my black belts, George Gonzalez. This was about 1979 is when I had my first bouncing gig. It kind of gelled together, the bodyguarding and the bouncing. And I started working. My first gig was at a club called Disco Inferno on 35th Street, and I believe it was 6th Avenue. And I remember people used to always ask me where I work out at and things like that. And then I would have guys ask me, did I do personal bodyguarding and things of that nature? And it just took off from there, I would say, around about 1979. And then from there, I just kept doing it.
What were some of the clubs that you bounced at?
Oh, Studio 54, Bond International, the Palladium, First Class. I can go on and on. Vertical, Club Vertical. I can go on and on. I can't remember, but it was I can't even remember, but it was close to 100 or more clubs, easy.
What was your favorite one to work at? Or what was the best club to work
Hands
at?
down, Bonds International Disco. Back in 1981 is when I started working there. A matter of fact, I started and hired Timok at Bonds International. He was working. We worked together as bouncers at the club, and that's how I met him. Real wild. He was only about 17 years old at the time, and I'm talking about Timok from the Last Dragon. And that was the best club. Made a lot of money. Met a lot of people. Not always fun being a bouncer. During that time, it was a lot of violence, but
Hmm.
um, that was probably hands down the most memorable club for me.
Any memorable experiences working at that time?
Oh yeah, plenty. There's too many that stick out, but I remember one time standing in the front of the club, and this guy was harassing the people on line. And it was myself, Timok, a gentleman by the name of Rudy Gonzalez, and Timok's brother Mishan. We were working at the front door, and the guy kept harassing people. Come to find out, the guy was a pro boxer. He had just got a little tipsy, and his manager was with him, but he couldn't control him. And he kept asking us to, just let him be because he was a pro fighter. He was fighting the following week, and just let him be. But he was harassing the people so bad, we had to do our job. And he kind of came at me and in a threatening manner, and he started cursing at me. So I asked him to leave the front of the club, and he wouldn't. So he challenged me, and I stepped outside the rope, and it was lights out for him.
Was he undefeated at that time?
He was undefeated. He was undefeated. He was 15-0. Can't mention his name, but he was undefeated. He was fighting the following week at a place called a Felt Forum, which was a smaller part of Madison Square Garden. And yeah, he got what he was looking for that night. Wasn't a pleasant thing for him.
He wasn't undefeated after that.
No, he wasn't.
All right. Who is the easiest person to work with as a bodyguard and hardest person to work with?
The easiest person I have to say was Tupac. Um, Surprisingly, he was a really, really nice gentleman. The toughest and most difficult guy to work with, and it wasn't because of him, it was more because of his entourage. That would be DMX. We actually, myself, my nephew Robert Lee Lewis, another friend of mine, Tony Harris, and another guy named Bo, I took them out there to work in Washington, D.C., to bodyguard him on his national tour.
Hmm.
And I walked out on him because uh, I just couldn't take the rowdiness of his guys that was all around him. hangers on. That's what they call those guys. The guys that just like to be in the background and act like they're tough. And I couldn't take it, so I walked out on him, and he just wouldn't listen to my advice. So I didn't last with him.
Were there any issues with you receiving money or any of the bodyguards there present receiving money?
The night of the concert, yeah, yeah. The promoter actually cut out with the money, and I happened to be the only one that had his own personal number. And when he tried to leave with the money, I knew where he was, and I called him and told him I knew where he was, and he told me to meet him, and I went to meet him to get our money. And when he came down to the parking lot and the elevator doors open, he walked out. Uh, Unknowing to him, there was two elevators, and I was followed by the other security. And we got in the car and left. And all I remember is looking over my shoulder, and they had him surrounded with a bag full of money in his hands. Yeah, I don't know whatever happened to him though.
All right, let's get back to Tupac. How was Tupac?
Good guy. Tupac was a really nice guy. I did some work with him in Queens, at a place called Trafalgar Square, and we had a big crew that those couple of nights that we worked with him. And I got a chance to be around him, talk with him, laugh, joke with him, and he was a really nice guy. And matter of fact, I was one of the last guys to talk to Tupac about 2 weeks before he died. That had a really good conversation with him, where he came to visit me at a club, and he wanted me to work for him that night, but I couldn't because I was the head of security at this club on 78th Street and Amsterdam Avenue, uh, on the west side in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted me to work with him, but I had heard that he was having a so-called riff with the west side, what do you call it, the West Coast guys.
Right.
And I don't know much about rap. I'm a little older than those gentlemen. And I tried to tell him, he was making too much money to have any kind of problem with a rivalry rap group. And he was receptive to my words, and he grabbed me and he hugged me. At the time, they used to call me Apollo, and he called me Uncle Apollo or Papa Apollo. And he said, "Don't worry, Papa Apollo. I'm gonna be careful. I'm gonna take your word of advice, and I appreciate you and I love you." And then 2 weeks later, he was murdered.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yes. Yeah. Good kid though. He was a good kid.
May you rest in peace.
Yes, sir.
So on that note, let's cut to commercial. We're gonna come right back.